Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 152 of the Falcoholic Live. I am your host, Kevin Knight, joined by a full house of wonderful guests and co-hosts this evening. First of all, you see him on the screen. He is David Walker, aka Falcoholic DW on Twitter, the host of the Falcoholic podcast and frequent writer, columnist at thefalcoholic.com. DW, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm here to defend the record of Dirk Cutter as offensive coordinator.
All right, get out. That's it. I'm cutting him off. I'm cutting his mic right now. No, but I don't think anyone's here to do that, folks. Everyone relax. Put the pitchforks down, please. I can see some of you in the back. Just imagining this was a live studio audience. You know, people probably would have brought stuff to throw. But yes.
Tomatoes and...
Oh, yeah. Well, now Eric has spoiled the surprise by talking, but we do have, Mr. ESPN himself, Eric Robinson, at _Eric Robinson on Twitter, here with us. He's coming down, to spend time with us, normies. Eric, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good, Kevin. Doing good.
Yeah. But you never thought you would take so much heat for getting hired at ESPN, but,
I'm getting a lot of shit.
No, we're excited for him. We're happy for him. And then I will get to Evan in just a second. We do have our special guest joining us right now, so I apologize, Evan, for cutting you off, but I will come back, I promise. So,
Poor Evan.
Scott, how we doing? Can you hear me? We're working on it. This is the fun of a live show, folks. We have to work on the fly. It requires a lot of, responsibility from me to keep things moving while we wait for guests to connect. This is as good a time as any to welcome Evan to the show. Speaking of Evan, at Evan Birchfoot on Twitter, Director of Guest Personnel. Evan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. It's great to be back. It's been a couple weeks for me, so yeah, ready to talk Falcons.
Absolutely excited to get to it. And although he hasn't acknowledged our presence yet, we do have Scott Bair here. He is at Scott Bair NFL. There he is. Scott, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I got
Okay, perfect.
I'm over 40, so technology gets a little more difficult. It's like right when you cross the threshold, I lose the ability to use my cell phone. I can't respond to text messages. So at least I logged in. That's a positive step. And hey, man, thanks for having me. Been out here for about a month. I really dig the site. You guys work your tails off. It's very easy to see. I'm stoked to be on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always excited to have new folks on, and I know you came to Atlanta just like you said, just a couple months ago, and I had the chance to meet you at training camp, which obviously was nice and a lot of fun there. But yeah, welcome to the show, of course, and we're gonna get into it, guys. We're gonna be doing some, of course, training camp recap talk, and then we're gonna be talking about the first preseason game of the year. Arthur Smith going against his old team, the Tennessee Titans, and we are going to be talking about all the stuff involved with that. But we're going to kick it off with kind of recapping our thoughts on training camp. And there's a lot to cover, obviously. We have all been reporting on training camp for the past, 10, 11 days. But let's start on the offensive side of the ball. That way we have some direction, because we could probably take this in a million different ways. So I'll actually let Scott take us away here first. Scott, give me one of your big takeaways from watching the Falcons offense over the last 10 or so days. What is one thing that stood out to you from seeing the first bit of training camp practice?
I'm glad that I went first so I could take the most obvious and then watch you guys kind of have your wheels spin and try to think of something else. So I'll take Kyle Pitts. I'll walk right into the easy guaranteed layup type of basket. And he actually spoke to the press earlier on Wednesday, kind of talking about his camp experience. It's his first time at the podium since camp started, and the first time that it's been 12 practices now. And I would say in every practice there was at least one what I would call eyebrow raiser, right? Where you're like, did he just do that? And that's a good thing for a guy that's being moved all over the field. He's being asked to do a bunch of different things, as you guys know, and if you guys have written about on your website. And we're seeing that come into fruition. Arthur Smith goes through training camp, and I love the philosophy. He's going to install plays and he's going to work on things, and some of them are going to work and he's going to use them in the regular season, and some aren't. He's going to toss them in the trash or say, let's wait till we have a different talent grouping. But to see Kyle work he went up against Avery Williams earlier today, and I think he had him by about 1.5 feet. And it was
Poor Avery Williams. Oh man.
Right, but there were also times where he's going up against AJ Terrell, which when they go head to head, that's a must-watch rep. Like I don't shut up for anything, and I stop and watch because those are the matchups that I like to see. And you don't want to overhype a guy that's never played an NFL snap, but here we go. He's just really good, and I know that's the obvious takeaway. But it's definitely the biggest one. I'm never one to anoint rookies or to guarantee they're going to be this or that. And I'm not going to do that here. But I will say this guy has all the tools to be successful right away. The guy's so gifted and can do so many things well.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. We saw firsthand pretty much every day Kyle Pitts making highlight sort of plays. I was fortunate enough to have him catch one right in front of me on the sideline. So, shout out to Kyle Pitts for that. That was a lot of fun to videotape and get that out there. But, the team, I think, actually did have the better angle. So I have to tip my cap, to AtlantaFalcons.com for that tremendous shot there. But, I mean, it was like every day. It was like you blink and you miss it because he was doing it all the time. And it's the hype has already run away. There's no stopping it, so we might as well not even try at this point. He's basically looked like everything you could hope for from that sort of player, that sort of pick through the early part of training camp. So now it just has to translate to the game, to the games. That's really the next step there. All right, yeah. Anybody else want to touch on Kyle Pitts before we get our next training camp takeaway here? No more Kyle Pitts? Wow, you guys, man, just all right.
It really, honestly, could we say that it's too early for us to kind of sort of be spoiled by Kyle Pitts at this point? Like we already know and how he's going to be. We already know. I mean, at least for me, I expected him to have that type of training camp where he's making at least one play a day where it's like, oh my God, he really made that play. But he's got some lofty expectations sitting ahead of him, and it honestly really doesn't have much to do with former number 11. I mean, the fact that he's the highest rated tight end ever drafted alone, he's stepping into a very big stage, and I hope this kid is ready, man, because he's gonna have the lights and the eyes on him every game.
Yeah. I mean, there's no escaping it. Like, and to be fair, he's lived up to the hype. Like, he has absolutely delivered. He carries himself like someone who's used to this sort of attention. I mean, being one of the top players in college football, probably not that different. Obviously he's on a national scale now, but it's crazy that the Falcons training camp, especially coming off a 4-12 season, not something you'd expect the average fan to really be interested in. But because of Kyle Pitts and particularly his like fantasy sort of ceiling, every single fantasy player has been obsessed with Falcons training camp and every single little tidbit they can get about Kyle Pitts. So that is always nice to have out there as well. But let me go now to DW. DW, do you have an offensive takeaway from training camp that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's maybe not as positive. I'm glad we started with Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
But it's the uncertainty on the offensive line. Coach Smith talked about there being competition, and we sort of knew we had two penciled-in starters, right? Jake Matthews, Chris Lindstrom. And we're losing Alex Mack, so we knew there was going to be a competition at center. It looks like Hennessy's the guy there. We knew there was a big question mark at left guard. I think the one we weren't anticipating was right tackle. And obviously injuries clearly played a major factor in that, with McGarry out until just recently and Gono still out for an unspecified period of time. And I think it's created a lot of mixing and matching, trying guys out. Jalen Mayfield, getting a lot of run at right tackle. Willie Beavers now getting those shots. And honestly, this is something that Arthur Smith had to deal with last year in Tennessee. People forget that in the midst of that fantastic offensive run that the Titans had, he lost, I believe, not just his starting left tackle, but he put Tyson Breo in at left tackle and lost him several games later.
Yeah.
So, I think Arthur Smith is coming into the season knowing that it's not just about the starters. It's about those guys behind the starters and how you're going to have them ready to go at a moment's notice. If you remember back to 2016, the Falcons had an anomalous season with the offensive line because all 5 starters played in all 16 games.
Yep.
And they were the only team in the NFL that year that had that take place. And I think that Arthur Smith's time in Tennessee has informed him that having that depth and getting these guys ready, even in the midst of injuries coming into camp, is going to be critical. And for me, that is one of the things I'm going to be paying a ton of attention to in these preseason games, is to see those backups, because they matter. And if you're going to continue to have success even after injuries, those are the guys you have to turn to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The offensive line, definitely a big point of concern. I figured this was just an excuse for you to talk about Willie Beavers, because I think he's your new favorite player. But
I'm going silly for Willie.
There you go. Yeah. So I had something about leave it to Beavers, but just leave it to Beavers to take care of your swing tackle role. But that, come back to me, guys. I can do better. But but yeah, I mean, we're gonna talk more about that obviously when we get to more of the preseason conversation, because that matters, considering that he's probably going to play a lot in that game. But yeah, I totally agree with you there. That, I think, is the biggest sort of question mark at this point. Can the Falcons sort of cobble together enough on the offensive line to get through the season? And really, the continuity is such a big thing, as you pointed out, with the last time the Falcons had a truly great offensive line, or even above average, was probably 2016, where they did manage to stay healthy finally. Quick interlude here for a donation from George Costanza with the $5. George, thank you so much for your support, man. We appreciate you. He says, "Congrats, Eric. Let the big dog eat." He'll gladly read anything you write on ESPN, but he's more of a Fox Sports guy personally. And he says, "Congrats. You deserve it." So thank you, George, as well, for your support. Yeah, and guys, definitely check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. And if you're enjoying the discussion, do like, subscribe, and make sure you follow all the great people taking part tonight. Thank you guys for that. We all appreciate it. All right, so next up, since I waited until last to introduce Evan, I will let Evan take the next shot. Evan, an offensive takeaway from the training camp of the Falcons, from you, please.
I think a lot of my eyes have been, the wide receiver group, especially because of there's really no, staunch veterans there. Ridley is, I think, in his 4th year, while technically Tajay Sharp, I think, is the 6-year veteran.
Yeah.
There's not like a lot of older players, and it seems like once you get past Ridley and Gage, it's kind of up in the air. I know Christian Blake is probably, him and Zacchaeus are probably safe, but, Frank Darby, a lot of people like him. It'll be interesting to see if he kind of separates and kind of joins that group. I know you talked to Austin Trammell's coach or whatever, which was an excellent interview. There's a lot of guys there, and it's like, does Chris Rowland make the roster now that Patterson's kind of the special teams guy? That it's not really a takeaway to answer your question, but it's more of like a focus, because it seems like once you get past Ridley and Gage, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Wide receiver, totally wide open behind Ridley and Gage. I guess I would say like Olamide Zacchaeus has kind of seized the third role, and I think he's had a really, really great camp.
Blake too, because of his size, but aside from that, I think anybody's got a chance.
Yeah, and then there's also the question of like, do they keep only 5 this year, because it seems like tight end is going to be even more of an emphasis, and we'll kind of get to that more when we talk about the depth chart that came out in the preseason game. But yeah, a good observation there, Evan, for sure. And then
assuming Patterson, he I know he's listed as a running back, but having him technically also playing receiver gives him kind of flexibility there too.
Yeah, that helps a lot with the roster construction, because technically he can be an extra receiver if you need somebody out there. Absolutely. All right, finally, last but not least, Eric Robinson. Eric, your major offensive takeaway from the start of training camp.
It's as a whole, just wondering, because of course all eyes are going to be on Calvin Ridley, but who's going to step up? And this offense is going to need a number of guys step up to the plate and be, step up to the forefront and be those reliable playmakers going forward for Matt Ryan and for this offense and for this new scheme that's being implemented by Arthur Smith, who's also a rookie head coach. He's going to need some guys that are going to have to take the mantle now that, there's no Julio Jones anymore. So, the attention is going to be on Calvin Ridley, and rightfully so. He's a very talented receiver, and he's going to be asked to be the leader of the bunch this offseason. But outside of him, who else? I mean, I know there's a lot of expectations for Kyle Pitts to be that playmaker as well, but let's be quite honest here. That's a lot to ask for a rookie, regardless of what position he plays, to say, hey, fill the void left by Julio Jones.
Yeah.
So he's going to be able to make some plays, but again, it's going to have to be a collective bunch of guys that's going to step up and make some plays and put some points on the board for this offense. So that's one takeaway that I have, is just trying to figure out consistently outside of Calvin, who's really making that extra play, who's really staying a little bit more after practice to get those extra reps in so they can develop. And a lot is going to be asked upon of guys that are behind Calvin and Kyle.
Yeah.
So, Mike Davis, can he produce? He's a veteran, but he's never had a 1,000-yard season, and he's now the lead back now. He's going to be the RB1. Is he ready for that workload? Russell Gage as well. He's going to have to step to the forefront. Cordero Patterson, they're paying him a decent amount of money, and I think what he's being paid is him being asked to be more than just a kick returner. They're gonna put him in considerably on offense. So just that's what I've been keeping my eyes on. Just who is developing consistently enough to be, that playmaker on game days for Matt Ryan and this offense.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that it's definitely going to be more of a committee approach behind Calvin Ridley than we've seen in the past, where it's been like, oh, it's Julio Jones and it's Calvin Ridley and it's Russell Gage, and it's this sort of three, sort of very high profile guys. And I think there's not necessarily going to be like one wide receiver three. There's going to be a multitude of guys, and they're going to play in different times. And I think, sometimes Kyle Pitts is going to be the wide receiver too. So
in some games, just trotting out 11 and 18 is good enough to win a game. That's, you didn't really have to worry about much against certain opponents. But now that there's no Julio, and, all eyes are going to be on 18, and, he's probably going to get doubled a couple times. We'll see. But who's going to be ready, man? Matt's going to have to call on somebody. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see who's going to step up.
Yep. All right, let's change things over to the defensive side. I'll go to DW first on this one. DW, what is one big defensive takeaway or observation you've got from the first 11 or so days of training camp?
So I'm going to jump in front of Scott here, because he started with the positive. I'm going to start with a positive on the defensive side, and I'm going to go to AJ Terrell, because this guy's name is showing up every single day in the same way that Kyle Pitts is showing up on offense. It seems like every day we're hearing about AJ Terrell making plays, and he's not making plays against backups. He is defending Kyle Pitts. He's defending Calvin Ridley. He is breaking up passes. He's intercepting passes. And he is taking that step enough so that, Matt Ryan specifically called him out in the press conference and said, hey, this guy has the recognition of some of these top corners in the league. And this is what we thought he might be capable of. He had, as many rookies did in 2020, a disrupted rookie year. They didn't have rookie training camp. They didn't have the full preseason. They didn't have preseason games to get ready. And he still had a very strong rookie season. And I think that from what we're hearing, it sounds like he's ready to make a major leap forward in year two. And we need it. We've had some issues at cornerback. We had a good run there for a little while with guys like Desmond Trufant. But I think Terrell is the next era of good secondary play for the Falcons. I'm excited to see him get some time in the games.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you there. Terrell, I think, has shown all the signs of someone who we should expect to make a second-year leap, which is definitely a thing for cornerbacks in particular. And considering he was already one of the best rookie corners in the NFL last year, even outplaying guys like Jeff Okudah, who I was a huge fan of, ended up going, top 5, obviously out of the Falcons' range. But he outplayed him, and I think, Terrell is Okudah, to his credit, I think is having a great offseason too. But I think we have a lot to look forward to with AJ Terrell, and he could be a real cornerstone at corner that the Falcons have. Cornerstone at corner, you like that? Yeah. That the Falcons can maybe build around in that secondary going forward. All right, back to our very special guest, Scott Bair. Scott, did you have a takeaway from the defense over training camp thus far?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of expand on what Mr. Walker was talking about, it seems like over the course of this camp, you're seeing coaches rotate receivers over against AJ to get to like sharpen their knives, right? Because that's how it's working. And so I'm new to covering the Falcons. I come from the West Coast, covering the Raiders and the 49ers. And seeing this guy in person over the last 2 weeks and over OTAs, maybe I didn't expect him to be as physical at the line as he has been. He seems fearless, and with that quarterback's bravado that you like to see, where he's confident and he's pushing people around and he's controlling the route more than the receiver is controlling him. And that's been really impressive to me. And you can look, just like I was saying, all right, there's one or two spectacular plays that Kyle Pitts makes every day, right? Well, there's some of those for AJ Terrell as well. But what I like is there are times when it's just like a blue collar type of thing. He like that wideout is so well covered that the ball is just not coming to him. Yeah. Right? And that's a big win to me too. And that's why I've been really impressed by this guy, his physicality, his knowledge of what Matt Ryan was talking about that I thought was interesting. And then I'll swear I'll get to my takeaway, and it will not be positive this time, is that he was talking about AJ recognizing patterns quickly, right? That the mental part of it is kicking. So if you feel comfortable with the mental aspect and you're strong and physical and he looks like a prototypical corner like he does, he can control the pace, the tempo at the line of scrimmage, and he's just been really sound every play. That's been impressive to me. So, yay Falcons in that regard. Cause for concern. Definitely, I think what we're looking at off the edge is not where it needs to be in this way. So Dante Fowler missed most of training camp on the COVID list, and he's kind of been slow to come back. And he had a one-on-one session. It was against Willie Beavers and a couple other guys. And you just saw the burst and explosiveness off the ball where you're like, wow, that dude is really quick off the edge, right? And it sounds like I'm saying something nice, but what I'm actually saying is I hadn't seen that in the previous 2 weeks, right? I hadn't seen that power and explosiveness off the edge from anybody else. And that's a bit of a concern, because if you're reliant on Dante, right, for all of your explosiveness off the edge, I'm not talking about Grady. He's in the middle. That's a different thing, right? Yeah. Grady's a beast unto himself, but off the edge, you're not seeing that type of juice coming off the edge in the same way. And that, to me, I thought, okay, Dante's got some, he's got some explosiveness. That's awesome. But where has that been? And is that a concern that even if you have a good rotation and you've got third down specialists and, first down guys and all that kind of stuff, is there enough off the edge to create the pass rush necessary to get this pass defense turned around? Now, we know Dean Pease is going to bring pressure from everywhere, and that's going to alleviate some of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, right, at some point you got to win with 4. You got to drop 8 and win with 4. And if you can't do that, you're in big trouble. And there is some concern off the edge that they don't have enough when they're bringing 4 to get there consistently, especially when we're going to see times where Grady's got a guard and a running back waiting behind him and a tight end, right? You know what I mean? He's going to be completely surrounded Aaron Donald style. Can they bring enough off the edge to keep the heat going? If not, it could make for some long Sundays. So that's a big concern for me.
Yeah, well, good thing for us. We're used to long Sundays here. Maybe you're gonna have to get used to it, but yeah, it's you're gonna be, maybe say, I don't know if you're like a real, fan of the team yet, but you're gonna be sweating out some Sundays, that's for sure. Never a dull moment at the end of games, I'll say that. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with all that you touched on, including Terrell, and that did kind of remind me of another corner in Fabian Moreau, who also kind of started off camp with this sort of slow, quiet start. But for, I think, a corner, that's a good thing. Like if you're not getting beat, and you're not getting targeted, that's kind of a good thing in and of itself, because that means your guys aren't open. And then we have seen Moreau start to make some more flashy plays, some picks and some pass breakups. And I think he's been quietly kind of one of the more impressive players on defense thus far. But I agree with what you said there. And then at edge, yeah, it's kind of, and it makes sense. Like Dante Fowler, top 5 pick, a guy who is, a very much sort of elite athletic prospect, someone, and you can tell from his draft pedigree, it hasn't always sort of come together for him out there, but in terms of that talent level, absolutely. And I think the Falcons have a lot of sort of quality rotational guys, but is there another starter opposite him that can get out there and really bring that juice? I just don't know yet. I kind of tend to think probably not, but we have seen, and this goes into my sort of takeaway, that Ogundeji, Adedakumbo Ogundeji, the rookie, has really started to kind of earn starting snaps consistently now. And it's possible he could sort of be a dark horse throughout the course of the season to kind of earn that starting job opposite Fowler, because there's really no one else there to sort of demand that role going forward. All right.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Just one round of applause for that pronunciation. You have
Was
no
it correct?
idea. I was sitting here. I got my roster right here. I knew I was going to talk about Adi, because I'm not even going to try. And I was practicing it and so nervous. Am I going to say his name right? And there's Kevin just dropping it like no big deal.
Wow.
We worked on it. Kevin,
I did. I practiced it in front of the mirror. Yeah. So just like Matt LaFleur. Yeah. But no, yeah, that one I'm not sure about, especially the last name. I don't know if it's Ogundeji or Ogundeji, but maybe we can, Scott, you can be our man in the facility. You can get the scoop for us and let us know. But that's a tough one. That's a mouthful for sure. But I'm gonna give it my best shot. I gotta try. So all right, let's see. I got to DW and Scott. All right, next up we will go to Eric. Yes, Eric, your defensive takeaway from the beginning of training camp.
I'm really loving what I'm seeing from their young linebackers, Deion Jones, Oluoka, and Michael Walker. Those guys, when it came to athleticism and speed, we never really had to question that. The last couple of years, Deion Jones has always been that guy that's got his hands on interceptions, and he's kind of carved his niche in the league as far as being one of the better coverage linebackers in the NFL. But now we're starting to see a little bit more from Oluoka. Now we're starting to see a little bit more from Michael Walker, and we're starting to see the instincts kicking in. Just a couple interceptions in particular that stood out. One when Oluoka was running stride for stride on the wheel route with Quadri Olison and snatched the ball right out of his hand. That's instincts, man. You either have it or you don't. Michael Walker getting an interception the other day off of a double reflection, not reflection, double deflection. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And again, instincts kicking in. You either have that or you don't. And those are the type of plays this defense is going to need. There's so many question marks from front to back on this defense. But one thing is for sure is that these linebackers, who are considered veterans at this point, well, at least from Oluoka and Deion Jones, they're going to have to be making those type of game-changing plays because, like Scott mentioned, there's a concern when it comes to the pass rush.
Yeah.
Dean Pease is not going to be able to blitz all 4 quarters. There's going to have to be a time in the fourth quarter where he's going to have a couple pass rushers get to the quarterback. And if they can't get to the quarterback, can someone make a play behind them? That's the thing. And these guys have shown that so far here in training camp. And I'm really excited about seeing these 3 on the field and what they can do.
Yeah, no, that's a good one for sure, and definitely something to monitor, because I think the linebackers could be a real strength, as you mentioned. We've got 2 experienced veteran leaders back there, and we'll probably touch on it more again going into the preseason discussion. But a slight change, with Oluoka manning the middle linebacker spot full time now, the Mike, and Deion Jones moving to the Will. This was something that some fans had brought up in the past. Is it a huge deal play to play? Probably not. But I think it suits their skill sets a little bit better. With Ola Wilkins got a little bit more size to him, but
the fact that they're interchangeable. I mean, that's always a plus. This is a league that is predicated on versatility, man. Sometimes you're going to have to drop down and cover a running back out of the backfield. Sometimes you're going to have to take, a deep coverage in zone. So, I mean, it's the fact that these guys can be able to get placed anywhere and still make a play or two is always a plus, especially for a young defense trying to grow up.
Yeah, no, I agree, and definitely excited to see how those two are deployed. I think we'll see a lot more aggressive blitzing from both of them, and Dion in particular really excelled last year when allowed to kind of be unleashed as a blitzer. I mean, he is so damn fast. He can scream through any gap that he finds, and I think that's going to be a real asset for this defense going forward if he's used in that way a little bit more. Totally agree with you there. Another quick interlude here for another George Costanza donation. George with the $3. Thank you, George. We appreciate you, man. All right. He wants to know, Richie Grant, stud or dud thus far, considering we took him over Liam Eichenberg and others. So I would say that it's kind of hard to get a read on a lot of the rookies, honestly. Other than Kyle Pitts, no one else has really gotten a ton of work with the starters.
STUD.
I think he's been pretty good. He's had some good reps against Kyle Pitts. He has rotated with the starters, but he started out, when I first got to camp, he was mostly with the second, third string sort of guys. By the time I left, working more with the starters, and it sounds like he's continued to get work there. We'll still have to see, especially over the course of the preseason. I would say that he's looked about what I expected. But Arthur Smith and Fontenot and all the coaching staff is really making the rookies earn starting reps. Other than Kyle Pitts, because let's not even pretend that he's not the starter. It's just don't worry about it.
Not what the depth chart says.
I know, Eric, but they're telling on themselves because Kyle Pitts started with the first team from the first second he stepped on the field. So we'll get to that.
Struggling a little bit.
We'll get to that, right? Yeah, but
Kevin, if I can hop in here just real quick. I think it's tough to evaluate where he is on the, if he's on the first or second unit. He's been on the third unit even at times. Sometimes he'll step into the slot as kind of like a big nickel, if they're playing with three safeties. And he can do a little bit of everything. I think that's good. He's a rookie playing a complicated mental position, and that's why they brought in Eric Harris and Jerron Harmon, right? So they wouldn't have to push Hawkins and Grant into the fire, just right over the cliff, right? They don't have to do that. They can bring them along slowly. And Arthur Smith brought up a great point, something I think made the Atlanta Falcons kind of social media page. He made a great PBU, right? I can't remember who it is now. On Patterson. Anyway, and then he got burned on the same route 15 minutes later, right? And we asked him about kind of what the difference is, and he's like, those are the times where you learn. That's when you go back to the dorms with Harris, with Harmon. You go over the tape, you figure out what went wrong and how you can, it's an up and down kind of wave, and he's learning the entire time. So I don't know, stutter dudded early August. I don't know about that. But I do know, to Eric's point, the guy's got talent. He's got size. He's got the versatility that you need as a modern safety. A very interesting prospect. You may have to have some patience, which is, again, that's why the GM goes out and signs veterans on one-year deals, right? That's why they do that. And guys who can, I hate to call it stopgap, but they understand what their role is, right? They know what's going on. And I think that benefits you, because then you don't have to throw Richie Grant into the fire. His confidence doesn't sink if it doesn't go right. And you can develop him at a proper pace and bring him in when he's ready. He's not quite ready for that first team gig yet, but progress is being made. That much I can see.
Yeah, and he's probably going to be a sort of high variance player in his rookie year, like most rookies. And I think that he will absolutely get worked in as the third safety. But we'll just have to see if he earns more than that to start the season. I think by season end he'll be starting.
Which might actually be a very solid role for him. Honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that people have a lot of expectations for second round picks, and that's fair. But the Falcons haven't necessarily hit on a lot of second round picks in recent memory. So let's let him.
Well, Kevin, to that point, we had a second round pick that was a safety years ago that didn't start a single game in his rookie year, and that was William Moore.
Yeah.
And he ended up being an absolute enforcer in the backfield. So you just can't you can't write these guys off in August, guys. You can't do it.
No.
And like Scott said, and I think I just want to enforce this. We want them to make those mistakes in training camp. That is the best way that they learn. And I think that they brought in those veterans knowing that they could help mentor these guys. If all they do is make plays in camp, that's actually not going to do you a whole hell of a lot of good. You want these young guys to take their lumps in training camp instead of during the regular season. So in my mind, if Grant is getting it dished out daily, that may be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Let him get burned now so he doesn't get burned later. It's practice, guys. It's they're doing things to test these players. And look, a lot of I would first of all let me make this quick point because I realize we're making Evan wait like an eternity to give his takeaway here. He's probably just chomping at the bit back there, but these one-on-one reps where it's defense against receiver or running back against defensive player in coverage. The offense is going to win that 75% of the time. You don't know what route it is. You're in single man-to-man coverage against a guy who can run literally any route in the book, and usually you don't have the sideline to help you either. So it's it's really hard to be impressive as a defender, but it's still useful information, and it lets guys get some experience, and it's fun to watch for the fans and for all of us on the sidelines. But don't be too concerned if you see guys getting beat in those sorts of one-on-one drills. I mean, it's not anything resembling a live game situation. If you're the only defender out there against one offensive player, it's real hard. It's real hard. So speaking of Evan, I apologize for making you wait so long, but your defensive takeaway from training camp.
Well, what was funny was I was going to talk about Richie Grant. So
okay, well, it's right on topic.
Hijacked.
Yeah.
George Costanza somehow hijacked, and he's not on the show. So
jeez,
I
way to go,
save
George.
my time for special teams.
Well, do you want to give a special teams one? We can go with that.
I just think it's so boring to everyone else, but I have a soft spot for special teams. But the punter battle is so exciting now.
Yeah.
With Sterling, unfortunately he's on IR, but literally, I tweeted about it a couple days ago how it's kind of funny how Younghoe Koo, his punter in the AAF, the Atlanta Legends or whatever, is Cameron.
I think it's Nazialek. Yeah.
Like Scott, I am not.
Yeah.
Good at pronouncing
I'm gonna go with Nazialek. That's my guess. Yeah.
Kevin, that sounds right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was his placeholder / punter with Atlanta Legends. And now they are, in the NFL on the bigger Atlanta team. I think that's very fascinating. Dom Maggio is still there. But I find the punter battle exciting, even though most people won't. So.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, maybe we should touch on the punt returner battle too, because I think that one's exciting, maybe even for the average fan. Although I do appreciate, your taste in punting and kicking. We should give you the title of, kicking and punting specialist on here as well, because I know your
field position is big, Kevin.
It is that field position wins games. All right. So, but punt returner is a big one. Obviously, there's been some shakeups there. It's funny because kick returner is so settled that there's not even really a competition going on. Cordarrelle Patterson isn't even back there catching balls in training camp. He's just off doing other stuff because they're just all right, he's the kick returner. I mean, he's an all-pro. You don't need to see anything from him in camp. But they've really been shuffling a lot of guys through punt return drills. The two sort of stalwarts that are basically there every day. Avery Williams, no surprise there, the 6th-round rookie corner who was one of the most prolific returners in college football over his career. I think he had 4 return touchdowns last year alone, so that's, pretty damn impressive. And then we have Chris Rowland, who was last year's undrafted free agent, who we all thought was going to win the return job because he was very impressive and then didn't end up winning, and so he's back. So it seems like those two are sort of the favorites. Austin Trammell was mixing in there before he got hurt, so we'll see if he works back in there. We've heard of other guys like Trevor Davis and Olamide Zaccheaus and other folks taking reps, but it seems like it's really down to Avery Williams and Chris Rowland as kind of the favorites. So yeah, I'm interested to see where sort of you guys land on that debate, and that can kind of segue us into the preseason discussion / depth chart discussion, because as Arthur Smith said, not going to see a lot of live punt stuff in training camp. Now we actually can with a live preseason game. Scott, I'll let you take a crack at it. Where are you leaning right now with punt returner, Avery Williams or Chris Rowland? I know you have, again, no live stuff to go off of, but I need your firm, committed, decision now on who's going to win the job.
Oh, I'm just going to forward everyone the sportsreference.com page for Avery Williams. And then I want everyone to scroll down to the return section like I am. And the dude has 9 return touchdowns between kicks and punts. It's 9. Nuts. That's a lot. And I don't care if the coverage is going to be better up here. This guy was drafted by this regime, okay, come on. This regime, there we go. And I just think that's the type of explosive talent that you want down there. But I just don't think you can count Chris Rowland out. You just cannot. There's something about this guy that I think the coaches like, that you see out there. He's undersized, just kind of a gritty presence on offense, maybe on special teams. So I wouldn't count him out, but then you start doing some fuzzy roster math, right? So you start thinking, well, if Williams isn't going to earn on special teams, like, what are you going to do? Cut him? That sounds like a terrible idea. And he's part of this draft class from this group drafted him. That seems very difficult for me. So I just go back. I look at 9 return touchdowns. And there's going to be some punts that, all you got to do is fair catch it. That's the minimum job requirement, as Arthur Smith likes to say. But man, you want explosiveness back there. That's why you got Patterson. That's why you got Williams. You want to win in that return game. Got to get something special. And he could be something special. Could be. We don't know. But could be enough for me.
No, I agree. I mean, I think he's like the best returner you've never heard of, basically. Like, I mean, I certainly not someone I had spent any time scouting before the draft, and also because after they, signed Patterson, I was like, okay, well, we're not taking a returner, but this shows what I know. All right, Evan, I'm going to give you a chance next because we've neglected you. I feel. Where are you leaning on that punt return battle? Yeah.
I think Patterson, just because of the experience. As Scott said, he had 9 kick return touchdowns since 2013 or whatever, when he came in the league.
Are you talking about Williams? For punt return. For punt return. Yeah, sorry. I may have said it wrong. Yeah. Patterson's winning kick return. Okay, guys, we can close the book on that one. Yeah. I think we can safely. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think we can safely give it to Cordarrelle Patterson. I know that's a bold take, but punt return between I
really have no take currently on punt return.
Oh, okay. That's fair. Don't want to put your neck out there. That's fine. All right. Let's go to Eric next. Eric, where are you leaning in terms of the rookie versus Chris Rowland?
I have to go with Avery on this one, man. Him being drafted, it wasn't just them getting a special teams guy. I mean, they got a special teams guy. Well, they got a guy who was, he won a few awards over there at Boise State, and he was considered by many as, arguably the best returner in college football the past couple of years. That's what he made his name on. Just the ability for him to find a crease and take it to daylight. So I'm going to give the seat to him. I think he's going to win the punt returner job. I think Chris Rowland, it depends on, like Scott said, as far as receiver numbers go and how many they want to keep. He's such a scrappy guy, man. And you feel like there's no room for him, but then every now and then he does a couple things here and there that keeps his name floating around. And I think that's what, Chris Rowland, I think at the end of the day, I think he's probably going to win a roster spot, to be honest with you, as a receiver. But I think Avery Williams is going to be the punt returner here.
I can't necessarily disagree with that. And then finally, DW, are you going to be the lone standout for Chris Rowland, or are you also Team Williams?
It's
a lot
gotta
of
be
pressure.
Williams.
A lot of pressure. Yeah.
No, I'm following the crowd because I'm lonely here. But yeah, it's got to be Williams. And I know we're not supposed to put a ton of stock in it, but this is the first draft class for this regime, and love it or leave it, they're probably going to give preference. If it's an even battle, they're going to give preference to their guy.
Yeah.
And like you said, Williams was drafted for that purpose. And I think there's another name that sort of has an influence on this, because when we drafted him originally, the primary goal was for special teams. And he's one of those athletes that you can see growing into a future role. And for Avery Williams, that would be cornerback. But Russell Gage was originally drafted primarily for his special teams prowess, and look what he has turned into.
Yeah.
And I think every team is looking for those guys where they can cut their teeth in the first 2 years on special teams, but their athleticism gives them this ceiling where they can grow into an even bigger role over time. And I think that's how they view Avery, and that's why I think he's going to win it.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think Avery's getting enough credit for his ability to be a dynamic returner in both aspects, whether it's kickoff or punt. So yes, they have an ace in the hole there in Cordero as a kickoff returner, but I was just looking his numbers up. He just had over 500 yards, 500 kick return yards last year.
Yeah.
So in the event that Cordero's not back there, I mean, they got a nice little consolation prize, I guess. Lack of a better term, in Avery Williams. So I think because of his ability to be that, electric playmaker in both realms is what's going to keep him on the roster as a returner.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. Scott mentioned it, but I'll list off his ridiculous 2020 return stats for everyone. So he had a 15.3 yard punt return average and 2 touchdowns, punt return touchdowns. Then he had a 28.1 yard kickoff return average with 2 touchdowns in just 7 games. 7 games, 4 touchdowns. That is ridiculous. And he had another, let's see, let me count real quick. He had 5 other total return touchdowns prior to the 2020 season for a total of 9. So again, a prolific punt returner and kick returner, someone who can do it all and may be asked to do it all in the future. Like Eric said, Patterson probably doing that this year.
But 38 total kick returns in 4 years, and he's garnered over 1,000 kick return yards in that time.
It's wild, man. He is he's a special returner, and that's not to take anything away from Chris Rowland. I kind of feel for him, because I feel like he's probably going to end up being someone else's returner after, if he ends up not making the Falcons roster. I think, honestly, the other aspect of it is I think Rowland has been impressive in camp as a receiver as well. And Avery Williams has been, I think, solid as a corner in camp as well. I've seen him playing on the outside and the slot, which for someone of his size, I think he's like 5'9". That's not necessarily where you'd think to see someone lining up, but he is an aggressive sort of corner. And someone that I think we shouldn't necessarily count out. But I agree with, we talked about sort of the roster math, and I think the Falcons would rather keep the 6th corner in Avery Williams than they would a 6th receiver, with their likelihood of playing, like a base 12 sort of personnel offense. So we'll see if Rowland can do enough, because I think he would really have to beat Avery Williams to get the job. I think if it's close, obviously that they're probably going to go with their draft pick, and that's unfortunate for Rowland, because I don't think it's really his fault. I don't think he's necessarily been outplayed to this point, but exciting battle to watch for sure. Excuse me. And on that note, let's get into this preseason game. Let's talk about this first depth chart and all of its ridiculousness. Scott, do you have any team insight on the construction of this depth chart for us?
This was my 16th NFL season, and the first 15 when the preseason depth chart comes out, the coach could have been Norv Turner or Dennis Allen or Jack Del Rio or John Gruden or Kyle Shanahan. They always say the same thing. They just say the PR guy did it, right? It's every single time. I think somebody over there in the staff has some sort of approval process on the whole thing. But I definitely think that no coach likes doing it. No coach feels okay with it, putting something out. It comes out not coincidentally exactly when the media press release comes out, which is where you'll have a depth chart every single time. Who knows? Maybe it won't even change till the regular season. So when you look at it, and it's probably no coincidence that there's no rookies in the starting lineup, even though we're pretty sure Kyle Pitts is on the first team. We know that Ogundeji nailed it. Is not the fourth string edge rusher.
No.
We can take that too. So I think ultimately, somebody in personnel has to take a look at it. But I wouldn't put any more stock in that piece of paper than I would our eyeballs. At some point, you just got to see it to believe it, and you got to know where it is, and you also have to know that my daughter just showed up in the screen.
Welcome. Yes, welcome to the show. Yeah,
Madison says hi. She loves doing that. It's like sport for her. It's like she knows that's doing something important. She knows where it is. She knows there's a computer. It's game time.
Oh yeah.
She found me. I thought I'd snuck away. Anyway, yes.
Hey, Kevin, we found a guest for next week.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to get her to say Ogundeji too by the end of it. But nonetheless, so the depth chart is. It's funny because when you write the one story, you present it, and then I wrote a mailbag today. Where I'm like, these things are ridiculous, right? But they're fun, and you know what? If you want to use it as a conversation starter, sit around and talk Falcons football with your buddies, that sounds pretty rad. That sounds like what we're doing, and I think that that's a good thing. Even if it's not going to be an accurate reflection of where we are maybe next week, right? I think right tackle is a great example. Like Willie Beaver storms into this spot and Jalen Mayfield gets pulled down. We all kind of know where Caleb McGarry is going to end up if he's healthy, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys have seen more Falcons football than I have. But nonetheless, I wouldn't say we should take that for exactly how the coaching staff feels about their football team. Man, I'm long-winded, but you understand my point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you said. There's some spots where I think it's a little bit interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think pretty clearly it's kind of sorted by almost like experience. It's like they took the guys with the most years and put them in the starting spots. And that's honestly how it looks to me on some of these ones. But, there's some that I think are a little bit interesting, where it's kind of like two veterans, at punter, for instance. Evan should be all over this. Cameron Nizialek, he is listed as the starting punter, even though he was just signed over Dom Maggio. And he's also the starting holder, which, Evan touched on it. He was Younghoe Koo's holder back in the AAF. So, again, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of reunite those two. That one is interesting to me. Let's see if there's any other ones that really stand out. I mean, I do think it's interesting to see someone like Chris Williamson at corner listed as the third or fourth corner, depending on how you look at the depth chart. He has been legitimately impressive, so that could sort of reflect the coaching staff, how they feel about him. And then another one I'll mention before I let someone else take a shot would be Jonathan Bullard on the defensive line. They're sort of listing a 3-4 lineup here, and Bullard is listed with the first team. He has been playing a lot with the first team, so it does seem like there is a sort of vote of confidence in the veteran who could play sort of an inside-outside role if required. But DW, I'll go to you next. Is there anything interesting you wanted to touch on the depth chart?
Yeah, less about the players, and if you look at the offense and how it's listed, and you mentioned it earlier, Kevin, and it's something we've talked a lot about in this offseason. They are listing their offense as being a 12 personnel grouping. And in the past, you have normally seen either, 3 wide receivers, tight end, running back, or, 1 tight end, 2 receivers, fullback, and running back. And we all have speculated, because Arthur Smith ran this particular offensive grouping more than any other offensive coordinator in the league in 2020. Running that 12 personnel was a big part of what he did in Tennessee. And this, at least in my eyes, is announcing that that's his intention. And I think that leans us towards the idea that they're probably going to keep 4 tight ends, because if you have 2 starters at that position, having only 3 guys available on game day is going to be problematic.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's less about the specific names because, no one buys that Kyle Pitts is a backup. Like, I'm sorry, PR person who put this together. We're not buying it. But I do like the fact that they are sort of signaling that, yes, our base package is the 12 personnel that Arthur Smith is known for.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is an interesting takeaway. Like, I think maybe that sort of thing is something that is meaningful. The way they're constructing the offense, because like under Shanahan, like you mentioned, it was more like the 21 personnel with the fullback listed, and then under Dirk Cutter, it was 3 wide receivers listed, that sort of thing. So that part I think is legitimately interesting. Eric, anything that you saw on the depth chart that you found particularly notable?
Not really. Outside of the Willie Beavers thing, that was a little surprising seeing. But if you watched enough football, you know that the first depth chart going into the first preseason game is not. I mean, there's no stronghold to that. Let's be quite honest with you. It's going to change next week. It's going to look completely different. And these type of things are fun to an extent because it catches the casual fan off guard. They look and see Lee Smith as a starter over Kyle Pitts, and they're thinking, well, what the hell what is he doing? What's Kyle doing out there? It's going to change. So I mean, really, man, honestly, and we mentioned it earlier, I keep looking at that edge rusher group, man, and
crying.
Yeah, because I know, and Scott brought up a really, really great point. The fact that, outside of Dante Fowler, they may not have that speed coming off the edge. And that's very concerning, man. If you just eliminate his ability, where else is it going to come from? And I just, my eyes are stuck on that portion of the depth chart a little bit. Like, man, who is going to really step up and be a difference maker here, man? This edge group is not a pretty thing to look at.
It is pretty scary, for being honest. And in a
is.
bad way. Yeah.
Very concerning. Very concerning.
One thing that I did notice that is more of a clerical thing is that when the Falcons signed Emmanuel Ellerbe as a free agent, they listed him as an outside linebacker, which in this sort of listing would make him like an edge rusher. And on the first depth chart, he is actually listed as an inside linebacker or just a regular linebacker, which is the position he has always played up until this point. So I'm glad that has been cleaned up because I was like, I don't understand why this guy would be signed to play edge when he hasn't really done that. So he is actually listed as an inside linebacker now. So that's something that I think has been cleared up, and that's nice for me for my clerical sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I know like Willie Beavers, I think is worth talking about because I agree, like someone in the chat mentioned it, that Beavers has been praised by Arthur Smith multiple times during press conferences. He said that, Beavers has basically been dominant in one-on-ones. He's kind of won all of his reps and he's earned his shot with the starters. And that's very encouraging to me. I don't think Arthur Smith is a guy who makes stuff up. So
correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Gono go into the first preseason game as a starter?
Yeah, he has in the past. Or I don't know if it was at guard or if it was at right tackle, but I know at one point.
I'm pretty sure we saw this same type of setup for Matt Gono at one point where, during training camp, he just earned a spot and lo and behold, the staff actually, really, they really liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he suffered an abdominal injury before the first regular season game, and that's what kept him from starting. And that's when McGarry.
But he was listed as a starter.
Yes. Yeah. And the week before the first regular season game, he had that abdominal injury, and that's when McGarry took the spot.
Yeah, that's important to note. Yeah, and
so, maybe this could be kind of sort of, I don't know.
It could be.
Matt Gono, Willie Beavers reincarnate. Like it may be the staff may actually be telling us something here.
Right.
That this is not just a joke. Like Willie Beavers is actually making a name for himself in training.
Yeah. I mean, former 4th round pick. So this is a guy that was, an early day 3 selection, not like a top 100 guy, but certainly someone who had quality tape and at least, sort of measurables to go off of. Bounced around for a while now, but he has played guard too. So, I mean, I think this is his sort of chance now. I mean, with McGarry sort of coming back a little bit slowly, Mayfield seems like they're kind of putting him on the back burner. This is his chance.
It just came out of left field.
It did.
Not even talking about Willie Beavers until like 2 days ago.
No, man. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually does turn into something. But, I mean, right now it seems like he's the favorite for swing tackle since Matt Gono probably not going to be on the active roster to start the season. So that is an interesting one for sure. But yeah, let's move on to some preseason talk before we close things out today. Again, guys, please do like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show. We do appreciate those metrics. Those both help us out. You can follow the show at Falcoholic Live on Twitter and check out our Patreon page for some exclusive perks. If you'd like to support us on a monthly basis, that is patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. On that note, our next patron Q&A session is coming up soon, and the Patron Fantasy League. I'm going to be just announced that on the Patreon page, but that will be kicking off here soon as well. So if you're interested in taking part in that, there's still time to sign up for the league. We'll see how many teams we want to do. We want to try to get as many guys as we can in there, but that's going to be fun, and I know a lot of patrons are looking forward to that. So on that note, let's transition to the preseason game, our opener against Arthur Smith's old team in the Titans. We've already heard today that Ryan Tannehill and, I mean, obviously Julio Jones probably not going to play in that game. So, the revenge story doesn't seem like that's going to come to fruition, but still lots to watch, particularly with the second and third string who are going to play probably all but the first series, I would imagine, for Atlanta. And, we'll see if Matt Ryan even comes on the field in this game. But let me once again go to our special guest, Scott Bair. Scott, what are you going to be watching for in particular when the Falcons take the field for the first time this preseason?
Yeah, I think it's weird. We've talked about special teams. That's normally when you get up and get a beer. Not on Friday, right? That's not what you want to do. And this is going to sound so weird, but if you want to look at this game in terms of roster construction, in terms of what the coaches are looking for, watch how they cover a punt. Watch how they cover a kickoff. See a guy that you've heard as being flashing, Chris Williamson. We talked about Chris Rowland. Christian Blake doesn't get a lot of run, but is always around with the first unit. Guys like that, if they can go down and earn it on special teams, some of these backup linebackers that we're talking about, those types of things. I know, watch special teams. That's not going to make you want to go buy a ticket. But nonetheless, I also think it's important, too. We've talked about so many of these wide receivers, so much, maybe not uncertainty, but we know who 1 and 2 is, right? Ridley and Gage. We know they're going to have tight ends all over the place, and sometimes Kyle Pitts is going to play in the slot and wide receivers. So these positions kind of don't mean a lot. But if you look at from Olamide back, right, why don't you put on your thinking cap and figure out who's the one that I like the most, right? Which one of these guys that you see that can play? Because we all know this team has some talent but is not deep. Okay, it's just not. So if you come across an injury, which guy do you feel confident that can step in those situations? So I'll just talk about the wide receivers. Olamide is one of those guys. I mean, maybe it's because I'm 5'7", he's 5'8". I root for those dudes, but he's just always open. He's always open underneath and doesn't drop the ball very much. But nonetheless, keep an eye on those wide receivers for who you like the best, who you'd feel most comfortable with stepping in should the worst happen to a frontline player. And wide receivers are always the one thing that don't you fall in love with them, man. Don't you fall in love with a wide receiver who catches a 40-yard, bomb and wins the game. Don't you do it, man, because you're just going to be disappointed.
Yep.
On August 29th to 31st, I guess. But nonetheless, keep an eye on that earlier group, right? If you're looking at it and you're looking at Sharp and Blake, and let's throw Rowland in there and Olamide, and you want to try to figure out which package of guys can help you. That's what you want to be looking for. That's what I want to see. Who did they trust? Who can you trust once you get past that first that first unit?
Yeah, that's a good one. Definitely watch the receivers. Those will be the fun ones to watch, I think. It's always fun to see how these guys perform, once they do get into a live game situation. Go to Evan next here. Evan, what's something you're going to be watching for during the first Falcons preseason game?
Yeah, aside from the exciting punter battle, as I mentioned, I think the running back battle is just exciting. Signing Mike Davis, he was kind of expected to be the number one, which is fine. Cordero Patterson, but it's like once you get past that, it's like Quadri Allison, who a lot of people like. Is he going to get like a good opportunity here? Donta Foreman, who they just signed, and then it's the two undrafted free agents, Javian Hawkins and Caleb Huntley. It's like all of these guys have a legitimate chance to make the roster. And they're going to be able to battle it out as they should. Unfortunately, last year, that wasn't the case, as everyone knows. But this year, we have 3 preseason games, and hopefully they make it count.
Yeah, I agree. That's another good one to follow, folks. Definitely keep an eye on that. Let's see, who am I going to go with next here? All right, we're going to give it to Eric this time. Eric, you're up next. What are you going to be watching for during the preseason?
I want to see this Falcons defensive line going up against this physical Titans offensive front. Because there's still some sorting out that needs to happen there. I mean, we know how good Grady Jarrett is, and we know that it doesn't matter where he's placed on a defensive line, that guy's going to be able to make plays. But there's plenty of question marks around Marlon Davidson. Can he take that next step this year? John Kaminsky as well. Can he continue to develop? What can Jonathan Bullard give them? So there's some questions along that defensive line, and I think this is a really solid test for them coming into the preseason to figure out, like, all right, these guys can kind of hold their own against a very physical Titans front. So let's see how they can be able to get after that Titans run game and see if we can start weeding out a little bit the guys that are going to be the starters and the reliable ones going forward.
Yeah, I agree. That's really the first opportunity we're going to get to sort of put eyes on these defensive linemen and offensive linemen for that matter, because I mean, there were pads and there was a little bit of contact, but the team has been kind of, reluctant to put the defensive line and offensive line drills front and center for us. I did not see them remotely close to where the media could stand, even one time in the 5 days I was there. So, I mean, maybe Scott, I don't know if it's changed since I left, but I mean, we haven't seen much of the drills. So this is really our first chance to get a close look at these offensive and defensive linemen and how they're going to perform in a sort of a live contact situation. So that's definitely something I would be looking out for. And then finally, DW, what are you going to be watching for on Friday?
I'm going to grab 2 since I went last.
Go for it.
I want to see Felipe Franks. The kid has a live arm. He can sling the ball. My only question mark with him is consistency with his accuracy. He seems to be sort of erratic once he gets outside of 15 to 20 yards. But the one I'm going to be paying attention to, and don't laugh at me for this, but that 4th tight end spot was previously secured by Jaden Graham, who was excellent on special teams. He was one of their, I believe he led the team last year in special teams tackles, and losing him in training camp was far worse than I think than people are giving him credit for. I'm looking at that 4th tight end battle because right now we're sort of penciling in Parker Hesse. The name I'm paying attention to, he popped to me Saturday at Mercedes-Benz. Franks repeatedly went to him. And I think when you talk about, receivers and tight ends, you look at who the quarterbacks are looking at, and that's John Rain. And apparently Michael Rothstein from ESPN put his notes out today. He noted that Rain got a snap or 2 with the first team. Mm-hmm. And he is a name that I think I originally had him penciled in as a guy that could be a practice squad, look for him in 2022, maybe beyond. But he's making a push right now. And I think we're underselling the importance of that 4th tight end spot, because it's obviously depth for an important position for this offense, but it's also going to be an important position for special teams where Jaden Graham was a contributor at a high level. So for me, I'm keeping an eye on Parker Hesse and John Rain to see where that where that battle goes in arguably one of the most boring competitions that you could pay attention to in a preseason game. But I am passionate about it.
Yeah, no, honestly, like I think that actually is an interesting battle. It's an underrated one because if John Rain had been sort of quiet, then it would be like, oh, we don't really know. Maybe Parker Hesse can impress or whatever. But no, John Rain was consistently one of the most targeted players with the second and third team offense. It sounds like now he's getting even some work with the first team. I think he's been very impressive as a receiver. And this is a guy that has that fullback versatility too. That's always nice to have in case Keith Smith, for whatever reason isn't able to come in, or maybe you want to have, a 13 personnel set where you've got 3 tight ends out there, but then you want to motion someone like John Rain into the backfield to create, sort of a 22 look. And really make it weird out there, which I think Arthur Smith would be into. So, I liked what I've seen from Rain so far, and I think he probably has the leg up right now. But we know that Arthur Smith really likes Parker Hesse. He has been someone that's followed Smith around now a little bit. So, 2 guys definitely that we should keep an eye on for that 4th tight end spot, because the Falcons are probably, I would say, almost certainly going to keep 4 tight ends, considering how much 2 tight end sets they're going to run. They're going to need that 4th guy. Probably will be active too. So, and I guess my thing, I mean, kind of, it echoes what you guys are talking about, but for me, it's mostly the offensive line. I want to see, I don't know how much of the first string guys we're going to see, but for the little bit that we do see, how does Matt Hennessy look at center? I think he's been impressive in camp, but does that translate? Can Josh Andrews be serviceable? I think that's the big question on a lot of people's minds is if he's kind of penciled into the starting role, which it seems like that's the case right now. Can he hold up and can he be, decent there? And then the rest of the line, can Willie Beavers look like a competent right tackle? Because if so, all of a sudden the depth is looking a lot better there. Do I think he's going to start over Caleb McGarry? Absolutely not. But I do think that having an extra swing tackle in your back pocket and a guy who can play guard and has played a little guard in the past too, very valuable on your roster, someone that the Falcons possibly weren't expecting to get sort of that contribution from. So I think that's an exciting one to watch. All right, guys, before we sign off, I do have another donation to read here from Corey Carter with the $5. Corey, thank you very much, man. We appreciate that. He says, all right, do you think that Deonta Foreman ends up beating out Quadri Olson, possibly also pushes Caleb Huntley and Javian Hawkins to the practice squad? I'll take the first swing at it and say that I don't think Foreman's going to end up on the roster, if I'm being totally honest with you. I think he's a late addition. I think he's here to compete with Caleb Huntley mostly. I think basically they're looking for their practice squad elevation guy, because I don't really think that Deonta Foreman is competing with Javian Hawkins in any way, because I think Hawkins is kind of a completely different style of player. Now it's possible that Deonta Foreman is more competing with Quadri Olson, and that could really be something to watch in the preseason. We'll see. Does Foreman get a lot of reps, with the twos? In that case, he probably is really competing with Olson. But, I mean, from what I saw in training camp, Olson was getting the second most carries of any running back, and he was playing pretty much entirely with the first string. So he doesn't seem like the sort of guy who's like a fringe roster guy or someone the team was looking to replace. Now, it's early. We haven't seen much from Deonta Foreman there. But I guess I would say that I think it's unlikely that Foreman beats out either Quadri Olson or Javian Hawkins at this point. But does anybody else want to weigh in on that sort of situation?
Yeah, I think right now Olison's kind of banged up. He's wearing a non-contact jersey the last couple of days. He skipped, I want to say, Saturday's practice as well. I don't think it's anything terribly serious. He's still involved in passing drills, but he's not ready for contact at this point. And Mike Davis ain't going to see anything at this point. I don't know, maybe never. I'm not sure what benefit that might have, except this is new system, new coach, new all that stuff. But yeah, so I think this is a way. I mean, it's kind of working both ways for everybody, right? At the worst case scenario, Foreman gets a game or two on tape, right? That doesn't hurt. Best case scenario, he comes out there and he wows you and he puts himself in position to compete with somebody. I don't think we're there yet. But yeah, I mean, Olison's a little banged up. How many carries is Huntley going to take?
Right.
early on. But yeah, so that's kind of where I think it is. I think it's a slow burner type of a move. Why the heck not type of a thing to keep Olsen away from getting hurt in the first game.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, like, they had only 5 running backs on the depth chart, like, going into this preseason game. Teams usually are carrying like 6 or 7 at this point, so, I think they want to be able to spread those touches around. I don't think they're giving a lot of touches to Cordarrelle Patterson, for one. They're probably not giving any touches to Mike Davis, maybe 1 or 2 on the opening drive or something like that, but Quadri Olson, if he really is their sort of running back too, they're probably not giving him a lot of touches either, so then it's like Caleb Huntley and Javian Hawkins taking like 10, 15 carries each. I don't know that they really want that. So, they did cut Tony Brooks-James, so there were just 5 running backs left, and only 2 of those are guys that, are probably taking most of the snaps. So I think just for the sake of having a third guy out there that you can sort of give carries to, I think Deonta Ford makes a lot of sense. And I think he's the type of player you just want to see, like, look, he had a devastating injury. We haven't really seen much of him since then, and it's worth seeing, like, look, let's see what you got. And, if you can surprise us, that's great. But at this point, I wouldn't necessarily expect a ton from Foreman. But I do like that they brought him in. All right, so we got one final donation from Tyler Russell with the $3. Tyler, thank you again, man. We appreciate that. He says, thanks for the great preseason coverage. You're welcome, buddy. And speaking of preseason coverage, good seg there, we will be doing our first live play-by-play show covering the first preseason game on Friday. We'll be going live at 6:30 and going all the way through the game, probably a little bit after, to get you guys through. For those of you that don't get the game on TV, we'll be going play-by-play, as I said. We'll have some great guests on for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you can always, even if you're watching it on TV, you can mute it and give us a try as commentary. Not that I can necessarily keep up with the people on TV, but it's the preseason. Maybe I got a shot. We'll see. But yeah, guys, definitely check that out on Friday. Like I said, we'll be going live at 6:30. So before we get out of here, guys, again, please do like and subscribe. We appreciate all that. Check the Patreon. Check the community Discord server. The link to that is in the show description. And before anything else, let me thank my wonderful co-hosts and guests tonight. We'll start with Scott Bair. He is on Twitter at Scott Bair NFL. Like I said, the new digital managing editor at AtlantaFalcons.com. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. Anything that you would like to let the people know about before we sign off?
Yeah, I hate to do this teaser type thing, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Go for it, yeah.
Give it about 10 days. 10 days? Yeah, about 10 days. We got some big announcements coming, man. I'm like dying to scream through this microphone into the internet right now, but we can't. But we got some big announcements coming, big, crazy, awesome stuff coming to AtlantaFalcons.com. Follow, just
keep
up with it. Yeah, man, I wish I could say it right now. Maybe I have to have it back on so I could say it on right there.
Oh yeah, no, we'll have you back on for sure, and we'll definitely, we're looking forward to that. I know it's been a little quiet since you got there, so I got the feeling something was brewing, something was cooking. So I'm excited to see what you guys are cooking up there. All right, now we have with us my co-host. He is Eric Robinson. Big time ESPN guy now, but he still makes time for us. We appreciate that. He is at _Eric_Robinson. Eric, anything else you want to let the people know about other than the fact that you are working at ESPN now?
That's about it. Sums it up.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. No, seriously though, thank you for coming on, and again, congratulations. We're all jealous of you. That's why we're so mean. So. Mean being, very light sort of meanness.
I just found out today that my assignments and what shows I'm going to be working with. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did say that.
Yeah. So I'm going to be working alongside a bunch of other prominent ESPN personnel for NFL Live, Sunday NFL Countdown, fantasy football. What else? Just about every NFL show you can think of. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man.
I'll be behind the scenes working alongside those folks.
Look
awesome.
At that flex.
Yeah.
Look at that flex.
Big time flex energy right
because
there.
I knew the questions were going to come. Well, what
right.
are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah, he's just getting out ahead of it. That's just smart right there.
Yeah,
that's just smart.
Putting it out there. Yeah.
Also with us, as you just saw, we had David Walker. He is at Falcoholic DW on Twitter, host of the Falcoholic podcast, our sister program. DW, anything else you're working on that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, Evan and I are going to kick back off the post-game podcast this Friday, which first preseason game. That could be interesting. Recapping that one. And incidentally, I think we all forgot it, but we should welcome Scott to the ATL. So
Yeah,
Scott,
absolutely.
welcome to Atlanta.
Yes, welcome to
Appreciate
Atlanta.
it, man. Love it up here. Except the bugs are huge and scary.
Yeah, it's okay. You got to go out there, slap them around a little bit. Then they learn who's boss, and they'll leave you alone after that. But yeah, you got to establish dominance early.
That's not what happens.
I know,
okay?
but I'm trying to see what happens. Yeah, I'm trying to see what happens when he goes out there.
They tell you they're getting ready to bite you, and then they bite you.
They're huge. I'm from Florida, so I know. Everyone was like, "Oh, Kevin, are you going to survive down there when you're in Atlanta for the week?" It's like I survived that for 20 years, brother. It's fine. But yeah, it is something else. The heat down there. We were blessed, honestly, with some pretty good weather that first week of training camp, except for that one. There was like one day where it was absolutely brutal. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to hold up. So we'll see. But yeah, thanks guys for that. Also with us tonight, last but not least, Director of Guest Personnel and Special Teams Consultant, Evan Birchfield. He is at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Evan, anything that you're working on you'd like to let the people know about?
Not off the top of my head, but once these preseason games start rolling, that'll help. So
Oh, yeah.
just thankful for Scott being on and DW popping by and big time ESPN stopping by. Looking forward to the season. We're almost there. 2 days, well, technically one at this point. It's night time, so.
Yeah, we're almost there. It's going to be exciting, guys. So yeah, definitely check that out. But again, thank you to everyone for coming on. Thanks for everyone for hanging out. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You can follow me there. You can check out my stuff. Like I said, be sure to join us on Friday starting at 6:30 p.m. for our play-by-play coverage of Falcons versus Titans, the preseason opener. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we hope to see a lot of you folks there. And stay tuned for more Patreon information, including the Fantasy League, which, as I've said, is coming soon. So not too late to get on that, but if you do want to sign up for that league, I suggest you got to be a patron to get in. So if you want to get in on that, your time is running out. So decide what you want to do with that soon. But yeah, guys, again, we appreciate everyone for donating, everyone for coming in and chatting and hanging out. All of the guests, thank you guys. So for everyone here at the site, thank you so much for your support once again. Finally about to see some, quote unquote, real NFL football here on Friday. Can't wait for that, guys. Until then, I'm Kevin, and for everyone else here on the show, have a great night, and we'll see you on Friday, folks.